Alright, so I'm going to use our current functions unit as an example of how we could use these effective questions, what it would look like in an honors level class, and then we can apply it to some of the CP levels. So an example of maybe a prior question, students have seen these graphs in previous classes, but it's just getting that knowledge activated. So a question we could ask prior to the unit may be, we could mix up the functions and the graphs and say connect the correct label with the graph. So we could put x squared over here and students would have to organize. That might be something to activate the learning. We could just have them compare and contrast the graphs and see if anything could come out of that. Maybe we could talk about some symmetry. Students would guide kind of the discussion. They might talk about intercepts, domain and range, increasing and decreasing intervals, and all of that would be questions that could arise from just comparing and contrasting. We could go through and we could give them specific questions. So some lower cognitive level questions might just be, which graph goes to the origin? Which graph has a domain of negative infinity to infinity? Which graph has an asymptote? Find the absolute minimum of x squared. So those would be lots of questions we could pose that would just get students to recall the facts. But if we had them to actually analyze, we may say, create a graph that is symmetric about the origin, or create an odd function graph. Or we could say, create two graphs or two functions that would have a domain of 0 to infinity, or a range of negative infinity to 4. And that would just get students to think about creating and analyzing those creations and applying the knowledge more so than just recalling the facts.